Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the main viewscreen. The ship had been traveling for 3 months now, pushing deeper into space than any human vessel had gone before. The Liberty was not much to look at with its thick metal hull and bulky design, but it was the best humanity could build in the year 2157. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Commander Lyra Voss monitored the tactical systems while Lieutenant Ben Clark handled navigation. Chief Engineer Lisa Park kept watch over the fusion engines from her station. They all knew they were making history with every mile they traveled into the unknown. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Clark, his voice cutting through the steady hum of the ship's systems. "Multiple contacts, heading our way." Jake moved to the sensor station and looked at the display. 5 distinct signatures appeared on the screen, moving with impossible speed toward their position. The objects were still too far away to get clear readings, but their velocity was unlike anything human technology could achieve. First contact. "Protocols," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the excitement building in his chest. "All hands to stations. Lyra, bring weapons online, but keep them powered down. We don't want to appear threatening." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to witness. The approaching vessels began to slow as they drew closer, and the Liberty's sensors finally got a clear picture of what they were facing. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that made human technology look primitive by comparison. They were sleek and curved, like living things carved from crystal and starlight. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow as they moved, catching the light from nearby stars and reflecting it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "They're trying to communicate," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "I'm getting a signal on multiple frequencies." "Put it through," Jake said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and changed, showing the interior of one of the alien vessels. The being that appeared before them was tall and elegant, with translucent blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its features were sharp and refined, like a work of art come to life. "Greetings, primitive beings," the alien said, its voice carrying an unmistakable tone of amusement. "I am High Admiral Krex of the Zephyrian Collective. We have observed your crude vessel approaching our territory." Jake stepped forward, maintaining his diplomatic composure. "I am Captain Jake Martinez of the United Earthship Liberty. We come in peace, seeking to establish contact with other intelligent species." The alien's expression shifted to something that might have been laughter. "Peace, you say? How refreshing. Most species we encounter attempt to flee or fight when they first see our vessels. Your ship is quite interesting in its own primitive way." Through the screen, Jake could see other aliens moving about their bridge. They seemed to be pointing at the Liberty and making sounds that were clearly expressions of amusement. One of them held up what looked like a recording device, capturing images of the human vessel. "Your propulsion system appears to be fusion-based," High Admiral Krex continued, his tone growing more condescending. "And those protrusions on your hull are those kinetic weapons. How delightfully archaic." Commander Voss tensed at her station, but Jake held up a hand to keep her calm. "Our technology may be different from yours, but it serves our purposes well. We would be honored to learn more about your civilization." "Indeed," Krex said with obvious amusement. "Your species shows promise, despite your technological limitations. The Zephyrian Collective has ruled this region of space for over 3,000 of your years. We have encountered many species in that time, and we have learned that integration is far more beneficial than conflict." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The alien's words were polite, but the meaning was clear. "What kind of integration are you suggesting?" "We offer your species a place within our empire," Krex replied smoothly. "As a client race, you would be protected and guided by our superior wisdom. Your people would be relocated to worlds more suitable for your development under our careful supervision." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Every human present understood what was being offered. It was not a partnership between equals, but subjugation, dressed up in diplomatic language. "We appreciate your offer," Jake said carefully, "but humanity prefers to remain independent. We would be happy to establish trade relations and cultural exchange on equal terms." The alien's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. High Admiral Krex threw back his head and laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in the wind. Through the screen, Jake could see other aliens joining in the laughter, their amusement echoing through their crystalline bridge. "Equal terms," Krex repeated, wiping what might have been tears from his eyes. "Your species has barely learned to leave your own star system, and you speak of equality with the Zephyrian Collective. Your weapons are metal projectiles, your ships are crude metal boxes held together with primitive welds." The laughter continued for several long moments before Krex composed himself. "You are entertaining, I will grant you that." "Very well, Captain Martinez. We will give your species time to consider our generous offer. One standard galactic cycle should be sufficient for your leaders to recognize the wisdom of accepting our protection." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Then we will be forced to take more direct action," Krex said, his amusement fading slightly. "The Zephyrian Collective maintains order in this region of space. We cannot allow primitive species to disrupt that order through misguided independence." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Through the view screen, they watched as the alien vessels began to move away, their graceful forms disappearing into the darkness of space as quickly as they had arrived. "Well," said Commander Voss finally, "that could have gone better." Jake nodded grimly, staring at the empty space where the alien ships had been. Humanity had just received its first ultimatum from the stars, and he had a feeling that one galactic cycle would not be nearly enough time to prepare for what was coming. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the holographic display showing the alien vessel recordings. The images from the Liberty's encounter had arrived just hours ago, and already the entire command structure was in chaos. The sleek crystalline ships looked like works of art compared to humanity's bulky metal vessels. "Play it again," she ordered, her voice tight with tension. The recording showed High Admiral Krex laughing at humanity's offer of equal partnership. Every time she watched it, the alien's amusement cut deeper. General Sam Cooper entered the briefing room, followed by Colonel Amy Turner and a dozen other senior officers. Their faces were grim as they took their seats around the conference table. The weight of humanity's first contact with hostile aliens pressed down on everyone present. "The analysis is complete," General Cooper said, activating his tablet. "Their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours in most areas. Their ships can travel faster than light without jump gates. Their energy weapons appear to be plasma-based with incredible range and power." Colonel Turner pulled up tactical displays showing the alien vessels. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of advanced composite material, light, strong, and apparently self-repairing. "Our conventional weapons would have trouble penetrating their defenses." Dr. Kevin Blake, the station's chief physicist, raised his hand. "Actually, I've been studying the sensor data from the Liberty, and there's something interesting here. The alien ships are incredibly advanced, but they seem to rely entirely on energy-based systems." Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "What does that mean exactly?" "Their weapons, their defenses, even their hull integrity appears to depend on energy fields and plasma technology," Blake explained. "It's elegant and efficient, but it also means they've abandoned certain approaches to engineering that we still use." Chief Engineer Lisa Park, who had arrived on the fastest transport from the Liberty, spoke up from her seat. "The aliens didn't even look at our kinetic weapon systems. When High Admiral Krex was examining our ship, he dismissed our railguns as primitive projectile technology. He seemed genuinely amused by them." "That's because they are primitive," Colonel Turner said, "compared to plasma weapons that can vaporize a target instantly. Our metal slugs must seem like throwing rocks." "Maybe," Park replied, "but they didn't scan them properly. They looked at our rail guns for about 5 seconds and then moved on to our fusion reactors. It was like they couldn't believe we were still using kinetic weapons at all." Dr. Blake nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what I mean. Their technology has evolved away from physical projectiles entirely. Look at their ship designs. He pointed to the holographic display. Those hulls are built for speed and energy efficiency, not for absorbing impact. Admiral Hayes studied the alien ships more carefully. The graceful curves and flowing lines were beautiful, but Blake was right. There was no sign of heavy armor, plating, or reinforced sections. The entire design philosophy seemed focused on avoiding damage rather than absorbing it. They gave us one galactic cycle to surrender, she said finally. How long is that in our time? Based on their communication protocols, about 6 months, replied Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone from the Intelligence Division. They're probably expecting us to spend that time panicking and then accept their offer? What do we know about their military tactics? General Cooper asked. Stone activated another display. From what we can gather from their ship formations and the way they approach the Liberty, they prefer long-range engagements. Their entire battle doctrine seems based on using superior speed and firepower to destroy enemies before they can get close. Makes sense, Colonel Turner observed. If your ships are fast and your weapons are powerful, why would you ever want to fight up close? Chief Engineer Park stood up and walked to the display, because sometimes you don't have a choice. Look at these engine signatures. Their ships are incredibly fast, but they're also delicate. All that speed comes at the cost of structural integrity. Dr. Blake joined her at the display. The energy requirements for their systems must be enormous. They're probably running close to maximum capacity just to maintain their current performance levels. Admiral Hayes felt a spark of hope for the first time since receiving the alien ultimatum. Are you suggesting we might have advantages they haven't considered? I'm suggesting they've made the same mistake we almost made, Blake replied. They've assumed that newer technology is always better technology. But sometimes the old ways work better in certain situations. Our ships are slow and ugly, Park added, but they're also tough. We build them to take punishment and keep fighting. These alien ships look like they'd fall apart if you hit them with a good solid impact. General Cooper frowned. Even if that's true, how do we get close enough to hit them? Their speed advantage is overwhelming. We don't chase them, Colonel Turner said, understanding dawning in her voice. We make them come to us. Force them into close combat where their advantages become disadvantages. Lieutenant Commander Stone pulled up star charts showing human space. They'll have to come to our systems if they want to conquer us. They can't just sit back and bombard us from long range if they want to capture our worlds intact. And if they do come close, Park continued, our kinetic weapons might actually work better than their energy systems expect. They've probably never faced an enemy that relies on physical projectiles. Admiral Hayes looked around the room at her officers. The despair that had filled the command center earlier was being replaced by something else. Not confidence exactly, but determination. Humanity had been underestimated before, and they had always found ways to turn their apparent weaknesses into strengths. How long would it take to upgrade our fleet? She asked. With our current resources, maybe 4 months to retrofit existing ships, General Cooper replied. But we'd need to focus on our strengths rather than trying to match their technology. Bigger railguns, Park said with a grin. Heavier armor, more redundant systems. Make our ships even tougher and hit even harder, Dr. Blake nodded. And maybe some surprises they won't expect. If they're really dependent on energy-based systems, there might be ways to interfere with their technology. Admiral Hayes made her decision. Do it. Issue orders to all fleet commanders. We're not surrendering and we're not running. If the Zephyrin Collective wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The officers began filing out of the briefing room, each carrying new orders and renewed purpose. As they left, Admiral Hayes remained behind, staring at the alien ships on the display. High Admiral Krex had laughed at humanity's primitive technology, but he might not be laughing for much longer. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped into the research facility deep beneath the Martian surface, her mind racing with possibilities. The emergency project codenamed Hammer had been given unlimited resources and the best minds humanity could gather. 3 months remained before the alien ultimatum expired, and every day counted. The facility buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. Captain Ryan Foster stood at the center of the main lab, reviewing blueprints for the new class of warships. The designs looked nothing like the elegant alien vessels. These ships were built like fortresses, with thick armor plating and massive weapon systems. "The railgun tests are exceeding expectations," reported engineer Carlos Webb, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We've achieved projectile velocities of 20% light speed with the new magnetic acceleration system." Dr. Rodriguez examined the test results on her tablet. The numbers were impressive, but she knew they could do better. "What about the tungsten penetrator rounds?" "Devastating," Webb replied with a grin. "A single projectile carries enough kinetic energy to punch through a battleship. The beauty is that it's just a metal rod, no explosives, no complex guidance systems. Just pure physics." Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone joined them at the testing station. "The tactical analysis is complete. If we can get close enough to use these weapons, the alien ships won't stand a chance. Their hulls are designed to deflect energy weapons, not absorb kinetic impacts." Captain Foster activated a holographic display showing the new ship designs. "The UES Defiance is almost complete. Heavy armor, redundant systems, and the most powerful railguns we've ever built. She can take a beating and keep fighting." "How many ships will be ready in time?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. 50 vessels of the new design," Foster replied. "Not as many as we'd like, but each one packs enough firepower to take on multiple alien ships." Chief Engineer Lisa Park entered the lab carrying a strange device that hummed with energy. "We've made a breakthrough with the sensor jamming system. This little beauty can interfere with the alien targeting computers." She activated the device, and the lab's electronic systems flickered. "The Zephyrians rely heavily on their advanced sensors for weapons targeting. If we can blind them even temporarily, our ships can get close enough to use the railguns effectively." Dr. Rodriguez felt excitement building in her chest. "How does it work?" "It broadcasts random electromagnetic pulses that confuse their sensor arrays," Park explained. "We studied the recordings from the Liberty's encounter and found vulnerabilities in their scanning patterns. They're so used to fighting enemies with similar technology that they've never had to deal with deliberate electronic interference." Lieutenant Commander Stone pulled up tactical simulations on the main screen. "We've been developing new combat doctrines based on our advantages. Speed isn't everything if you can't see your target clearly." The simulation showed human ships charging directly at alien formations, their heavy armor absorbing plasma fire, while closing distance. Once in range, the railguns opened fire with devastating effect. The alien vessels, built for speed and elegance, crumpled under the kinetic barrage. "The key is coordination," Stone continued. "Our ships need to work together, using their armor to protect each other while advancing. The aliens will probably try to maintain distance, but we can force them into close combat." Captain Foster nodded approvingly. "Our crews have been training for exactly this scenario. Human ships are tougher than they look, and our people are stubborn enough to keep fighting even when their ships are heavily damaged." Dr. Rodriguez walked to the observation window overlooking the construction bays. Dozens of new warships were taking shape, their hulls bristling with weapons and armor. They looked crude and aggressive compared to the flowing lines of alien technology, but that was exactly the point. "The Zephyrians think we're primitive," she said quietly. "They see our metal ships and kinetic weapons as signs of technological backwardness. But sometimes the simple approach is the most effective." Webb joined her at the window. "I've been thinking about what the alien admiral said. He called our weapons archaic, like they were museum pieces. But there's a reason humans developed kinetic weapons in the first place." "Because they work," Park added from across the lab. "A chunk of metal moving fast enough will destroy anything it hits. You can't deflect it with energy shields or confuse it with electronic countermeasures. It's just pure, unstoppable force." Lieutenant Commander Stone activated another display showing alien ship formations. Their tactical doctrine is built around energy weapons and long-range combat. They've probably never faced an enemy that deliberately closes distance for hand-to-hand ship combat. That's exactly what we're going to do, Captain Foster said with determination. Get close, hit hard, and keep fighting. It's the human way. Dr. Rodriguez felt a surge of pride as she watched the construction crews working on the new fleet. These ships weren't beautiful like the alien vessels, but they were something more important. They were human, built with human ingenuity, human determination, and human stubbornness. The aliens gave us 6 months to surrender, she said. Instead, we've used that time to build the most powerful fleet in human history. And we've learned something important, Stone added. Advanced technology isn't always better technology. Sometimes the old ways work best. The research facility continued its frantic pace of activity. In the weapons testing bay, railguns fired tungsten projectiles at incredible velocities. In the electronics lab, technicians perfected the sensor jamming systems. In the construction bays, workers welded armor plating and installed massive weapon systems. Engineer Webb stood before a massive rail gun that stretched nearly the length of the testing facility. This is the main gun for the Defiance. It can accelerate a projectile to 25% light speed. The kinetic energy release is equivalent to a nuclear weapon. And it's just a metal rod, Park said with amazement. No fancy energy systems, no complex technology, just good old-fashioned physics. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the calendar display on the wall. Less than 3 months remained before the alien fleet would return. But for the first time since receiving the ultimatum, she felt confident about humanity's chances. The Zephyrians think they're dealing with a primitive species, she said. They're about to learn that humans are primitive in all the right ways. Captain Foster grinned as he watched the latest test firing. The tungsten projectile struck the target with such force that the entire facility shook. Let them laugh at our crude metal ships. We'll see who's laughing when the shooting starts. High Admiral Krex stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Celestial Wind, watching the massive Zephyrian fleet assemble in the void. 200 of the finest vessels in the collective had gathered for what he expected would be a simple demonstration of power. The crystalline ships gleamed in the starlight, their elegant forms creating a spectacular display of advanced technology. The humans have not responded to our generous offer, reported Sub-Commander Vex, his voice carrying a note of amusement. Their communication channels remain silent. Krex allowed himself a small smile. Of course they haven't. Primitive species always need time to accept the inevitable. Their leaders are probably still debating whether to surrender or attempt some futile resistance. The bridge crew shared quiet laughter at the thought. The recordings from their first encounter with the human vessel had become popular entertainment throughout the collective. The crude metal ship with its primitive weapons had been shown to millions of Zephyrians as an example of how backward some species could be. Shall we proceed to their home system? Asked Commander Zara, the fleet's tactical officer. A show of force near their homeworld should convince them to see reason. Not yet, Krex replied, settling into his command chair. We will begin with their outer colonies. Let them see what happens to those who refuse the collective's protection. The fleet began its approach to human space, their faster-than-light drives creating ripples in the fabric of space itself. The journey that would take human ships months was completed in mere hours. The Zephyrian vessels emerged from hyperspace near the human colony of New Texas, their sudden appearance causing immediate panic among the civilian population. Look at that, Sub-Commander Vex said, pointing to the orbital display. They have defense platforms around their colonies, crude metal structures with those primitive kinetic weapons. Commander Zara studied the human defenses with professional interest. The platforms are heavily armored but slow-moving. Our plasma weapons will make short work of them. And those are their warships? Krex asked, observing the 50 human vessels that had moved to intercept the Zephyrian fleet. The ships looked even more primitive than the Liberty had, with thick armor plating and massive gun turrets that seemed almost comically oversized. "Barely worthy of the name," Zara replied. "They appear to be using the same crude technology as before: metal hulls, fusion drives, and those archaic projectile weapons." The human fleet was led by a ship that dwarfed the others, its hull bristling with weapons and armor. The vessel looked like a flying fortress, built for war rather than elegance. Its name, UES Defiance, was painted in bold letters across its armored bow. "They're actually going to fight," Sub-Commander Vex observed with barely concealed delight. "This should be entertaining." Krex activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships prepare for combat. This will be a demonstration of collective power for the humans and for our own citizens watching from home." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, civilian observers prepared their recording equipment. The battle was being broadcast live to billions of viewers across the collective. This was expected to be a quick and decisive victory that would discourage other species from resisting their expansion. "The humans are closing distance," reported the tactical officer. "Their formation is tight, and they're advancing directly toward our position." Krex frowned at this unexpected development. "They're not trying to maintain range? Most species attempt to flee when they see our superior numbers." Perhaps they don't understand the situation," suggested Commander Zara. "Their sensors may not be advanced enough to properly assess our capabilities." The human fleet continued its steady advance, their heavy ships moving in perfect formation. The lead vessel, the Defiance, showed no signs of wavering despite facing odds of 4-1. Its massive railguns were trained forward, ready for battle. "They're activating some kind of electronic system," the sensor officer reported. Detecting strange energy patterns from their ships. "Probably trying to scan our vessels," Krex said dismissively. "Let them look. What they see will only confirm their hopeless situation." But something was wrong with the Zephyrian sensors. The normally crystal-clear readings were becoming fuzzy and distorted. The human ships seemed to flicker in and out of focus on the tactical displays. "What's happening to our targeting systems?" demanded Commander Zara. "Unknown interference?" the sensor officer replied, his voice tinged with confusion. "The humans appear to be broadcasting some kind of jamming signal." Krex felt his first moment of concern. "Can we compensate?" "Working on it, but their jamming is unlike anything we've encountered. It's crude, but effective." The human fleet was now close enough that their ships filled the forward view screens. The UES Defiance looked like a mobile fortress, its armor scarred and weathered but undeniably formidable. The other human vessels formed a protective formation around their flagship, their weapons trained on the Zephyrian fleet. "They're moving into close combat range," reported the tactical officer. "Should we maintain distance?" "No," Krex said firmly. "We will not retreat from these primitives. All ships prepare to fire. Show them the power of collective technology." The Zephyrian fleet began to charge their plasma weapons, the elegant ships glowing with accumulated energy. The humans continued their advance, seemingly oblivious to the destruction about to be unleashed upon them. "Range to target?" Krex asked. Optimal. "Firing distance in 30 seconds, replied Commander Zara. "The humans are making this too easy." But Captain Jake Martinez, standing on the bridge of the Defiance, was not making anything easy. He watched the alien fleet with cold determination, his crew ready for the fight of their lives. The ships' railguns were charged and ready, their tungsten projectiles loaded and waiting. "All ships maintain formation," he ordered over the fleet communication system. "Remember, we only get one chance at this." The distance between the two fleets continued to close. The Zephyrian ships prepared to demonstrate their superiority with a devastating display of plasma fire. The human vessels advanced steadily, their crude metal hulls reflecting the light from the alien weapons. "Fire when ready," High Admiral Krex commanded. "Weapons charged and locked," Commander Zara reported. The moment of truth had arrived. The elegant alien fleet prepared to unleash their advanced technology against the primitive human vessels. But In the depths of space, surrounded by the cold stars, neither side yet understood what was about to happen. The first shot of the war was about to be fired, and nothing would ever be the same again. High Admiral Krex stood proudly on his command deck as the Celestial Wind's plasma weapons reached full charge. The brilliant energy coursed through the ship's crystalline conduits, creating patterns of light that danced across the bridge around him. 200 Zephyrian vessels prepared to demonstrate the overwhelming power of the collective. "All ships report ready to fire," announced Commander Zara, her voice filled with confidence. "Target the lead human vessel for maximum psychological impact." Krex nodded approvingly. The crude human flagship with its thick armor and primitive weapons would make an excellent example. Once the other human ships saw their leader destroyed, they would surely surrender rather than face the same fate. "Fire a warning shot across their bow," he ordered. "Let them see what they face before we destroy them." The Celestial Wind's main plasma cannon discharged with a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness of space. The superheated energy beam streaked across the void, passing just in front of the UES Defiance. The display of power was magnificent, a river of pure energy that could vaporize a mountain. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Jake Martinez watched the plasma beam pass harmlessly by his ship. The energy weapon was indeed impressive, but he had seen the test footage from the human weapons labs. He knew what was coming next would be far more devastating. "That was their warning shot," he said calmly to his crew. "Time to show them what human weapons can do." Commander Lyra Voss stood at the tactical station, her hands steady on the firing controls. "All ships report ready, Captain." "Rail guns charged and loaded with tungsten penetrators." "All ships," Jake announced over the fleet communication system. "Fire." The human fleet erupted in thunder as 50 rail guns discharged simultaneously. The magnetic accelerators hurled their tungsten projectiles at 25% of light speed, creating brief flashes of light as the metal rods left their barrels. To the naked eye, the human weapons seemed almost disappointing compared to the brilliant alien plasma beams. High Admiral Krex watched the human response with amusement. "Look at that," he said to his bridge crew. "They're still using those primitive projectile weapons. Metal slugs against our advanced shields." The Zephyrian observers throughout the fleet shared his laughter. Their civilians watching the broadcast from homeworlds found the human response equally entertaining. How could these primitive beings think their crude kinetic weapons could harm ships, protected by energy shields and advanced armor? But something was wrong with the tactical displays. The tungsten projectiles were moving far faster than the Zephyrian computers had calculated. The elegant alien ships, designed for speed and energy efficiency, had no experience with weapons that moved at such incredible velocities. "Incoming. Projectiles will reach us in 12 seconds, reported the sensor officer, his voice suddenly uncertain. "Activate point defense systems," ordered Commander Zara, though she still didn't seem concerned. "Our shields will handle whatever these primitives can throw at us." The Zephyrian point defense systems came online, designed to intercept energy weapons and guided missiles. But the tungsten rods were neither. They were simple chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds, and the alien systems had no effective way to stop them. The first human salvo struck the Zephyrian formation like hammers falling from heaven. The tungsten projectiles punched through energy shields as if they didn't exist, their incredible kinetic energy overwhelming any defense the aliens could mount. The elegant crystalline hulls that had been designed to deflect plasma beams crumpled like paper under the devastating impacts. High Admiral Krex felt his ship shudder as a tungsten rod struck the Celestial Wind's port section. The beautiful flowing armor that was the pride of Zephyrian engineering simply disintegrated under the kinetic assault. Emergency alarms began wailing throughout the ship as critical systems failed. "Damage report," he shouted over the chaos on his bridge. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, came the panicked response. "Engineering section is completely destroyed. We've lost main power and life support in the aft sections." Around the Celestial Wind, other Zephyrian vessels were suffering even worse. The cruiser Swift Current had been struck by 3 tungsten rods and was breaking apart, its crystalline structure unable to handle the massive structural damage. The destroyer Starlight Edge had simply vanished in a cloud of debris when a direct hit shattered its entire forward section. "How is this possible?" demanded Commander Zara, staring at the tactical display in shock. "They're using primitive kinetic weapons." "Primitive doesn't mean ineffective," Captain Martinez said to his own crew as he watched the alien formation dissolving into chaos. "Sometimes the old ways work best." The UES Defiance and her sister ships continued their relentless advance, their rail guns reloading for another devastating salvo. The human vessels absorbed the alien plasma fire with their thick armor, their redundant systems keeping them fighting even when damaged. Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone coordinated the human tactical response from his station. "Their ships can't handle kinetic impacts. The whole alien fleet is built around energy weapons and long-range combat. They've never faced an enemy that deliberately closes distance." The second human volley was even more devastating than the first. 50 tungsten rods slammed into the remaining Zephyrian ships, each impact releasing energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The aliens' beautiful vessels, so superior in speed and elegance, proved to be death traps when faced with weapons that could punch through any defense. High Admiral Krex watched in horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being destroyed by crude, metal projectiles fired from primitive human vessels. The technological advantage that the collective had always relied upon meant nothing against enemies who fought in ways they had never imagined. "All ships retreat to maximum range," he ordered desperately. "Reform the battle line." But the human fleet wasn't giving them time to reorganize. Captain Martinez pressed his attack, his ships charging deeper into the alien formation. The Defiance took hit after hit from plasma weapons, but her thick armor held. Sparks flew across the bridge as secondary systems overloaded, but the ship kept fighting. "Hull integrity at 60%, reported Chief Engineer Lisa Park, "but all primary systems are operational." "Keep firing," Jake ordered. "Don't give them a chance to recover." The Zephyrian fleet tried to use their superior speed to escape, but the human sensor jamming made coordination impossible. Individual alien ships found themselves isolated and surrounded by human vessels that closed distance and pounded them with railgun fire at point-blank range. Commander Vex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "Half our fleet is gone? How can primitive weapons be so effective?" "Because we underestimated them," Krex said bitterly. "We assumed that advanced meant better. We never considered that sometimes the simple approach is the most deadly." The battle was turning into a rout. The Zephyrian ships that had arrived with such confidence were now fleeing in panic, their elegant formations shattered by the brutal effectiveness of human kinetic weapons. The civilians watching the broadcast from across the collective sat in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible fleet was torn apart by metal rods fired from crude human ships. Captain Martinez stood on his damaged bridge, watching the alien retreat with grim satisfaction. "Signal the fleet. Pursue and engage. Don't let any of them escape to report back." The first shot had been fired and everything had changed. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The celestial wind limped through space, her once beautiful crystalline hull scarred and broken from the devastating human attack. High Admiral Krex sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the remains of his once mighty fleet. Of the 200 ships that had arrived to crush human resistance, barely 30 remained functional enough to make the journey home. "Engineering reports critical systems failure throughout the ship," Sub-Commander Vex sighed quietly. "We're running on backup power, and life support is failing in multiple sections." Krex nodded grimly. Around him, the bridge crew worked frantically to keep their ship operational. The elegant consoles that had once hummed with quiet efficiency now sparked and flickered with damaged circuits. The beautiful flowing lines of Zephyrian technology had proven useless against the brutal effectiveness of human weapons. "The human fleet is maintaining pursuit," reported Commander Zara from her damaged tactical station. They're not letting any of our ships escape. Through the main view screen, Krex could see the human vessels closing distance on the fleeing Zephyrian survivors. The used Defiance led the chase, her thick armor blackened by plasma fire, but her weapons still operational. The crude human ship looked like an unstoppable predator hunting down wounded prey. "Signal all remaining ships," Krex ordered. "Full retreat to the hyperspace jump point. We must reach collective space and warn them about human capabilities." But even as he gave the order, more Zephyrian ships fell to human rail gunfire. The tungsten projectiles continued their deadly work, punching through alien hulls with devastating efficiency. Each impact sent shockwaves through the collective fleet, reminding them that their technological superiority meant nothing against enemies who fought without elegant rules. Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien retreat with cold satisfaction. His ship had taken severe damage during the battle, but she was still fighting. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the bridge. But the crew worked with determined efficiency. "Damage report," he requested from Chief Engineer Lisa Park. "Hull integrity at 40%, she replied. "We've lost 3 railgun turrets and the main sensor array is badly damaged. But the primary weapons are still operational, Commander." Lyra Voss looked up from her tactical station. "The alien fleet is trying to reach their jump point. Should we continue pursuit?" Jake considered the tactical situation. His fleet had achieved a stunning victory, but his ships were also heavily damaged. The smart move would be to let the survivors escape and focus on repairs. But something told him that allowing any aliens to return home would be a mistake. "Maintain pursuit," he ordered. "We can't let them report back on our capabilities. The element of surprise is our greatest advantage right now." The human fleet pressed their attack, their damaged ships continuing to fight with stubborn determination. The Zephyrian vessels, built for speed and elegance, found themselves unable to outrun opponents who refused to give up. One by one, more alien ships fell to human weapons. High Admiral Krex watched in despair as another cruiser exploded under railgun fire. The ship had been a thing of beauty, her crystalline hull reflecting starlight like a jewel. Now she was nothing but expanding debris and fading energy signatures. "Only 12 ships remain operational," reported Subcommander Vex. "The humans are destroying us faster than we can retreat." "How is this possible?" Krex demanded. "Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. Our ships are faster, our weapons more powerful." "But their ships are tougher," Commander Zara said quietly. "And their weapons hit harder than anything we've ever faced. We built our fleet to fight other energy-based civilizations, not enemies, who use pure kinetic force." The truth was becoming clear to the surviving Zephyrians. They had evolved their military technology in one direction, seeking elegance and efficiency above all else. The humans had chosen a different path, prioritizing durability and overwhelming firepower. In direct combat, the human approach was proving superior. The Celestial Wind finally reached the hyperspace jump point, her damaged systems barely functional. Around her, only 8 other Zephyrian ships remained from the mighty fleet that had arrived to conquer humanity. The rest had been destroyed or crippled by weapons the aliens had dismissed as primitive. "Initiate hyperspace jump," Krex ordered. Desperately. "Jump drive is damaged," reported the navigation officer. "We can make the transition, but it will be rough." "Do it." The surviving Zephyrian ships disappeared into hyperspace, fleeing toward their home territory with news of their devastating defeat. Behind them, the human fleet held position near the colony world, their damaged ships already beginning repair operations. Captain Martinez stood in his ready room aboard the Defiance, composing his report to Earth Command. The victory had been complete, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew that humanity could fight, and that knowledge would change everything. "Sir," Commander Voss said, entering the room, "we're receiving communications from throughout human space. Word of the victory is spreading fast." Jake nodded. "And what about the aliens?" Long-range sensors show their survivors reached collective space. They'll be reporting what happened here to their leadership. Good, Jake said grimly. Let them tell their story. Let the galaxy know what happens when someone threatens humanity. The news of the human victory spread quickly through both human and alien space. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had defeated one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy using weapons that other civilizations considered obsolete. The elegant Zephyrian ships had been destroyed by simple metal projectiles, fired from crude human vessels. In the depths of collective space, High Admiral Krex stood before the High Council, his uniform torn and his pride shattered. The recording of the battle played on massive screens, showing Zephyrian ships being torn apart by human railguns. The council members watched in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible fleet was reduced to wreckage. You were defeated. By kinetic weapons? Asked the council leader, her voice filled with disbelief. They hit harder than anything we've ever encountered, Krex replied. Our ships simply couldn't withstand the impacts. Their crude technology proved more effective than our advanced systems. The implications were staggering. Throughout the galaxy, other species that had been conquered or intimidated by the collective began to reconsider their situations. If humans could defeat Zephyrian fleets with primitive weapons, perhaps the aliens weren't as invincible as they claimed. Back in human space, the U's Liberty returned to Earth orbit, her crew hailed as heroes. Captain Jake Martinez and his officers were welcomed with parades and celebrations, but they knew their work was far from over. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity, and not all the attention would be friendly. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in her laboratory on Mars, reviewing the battle data and planning improvements to human weapon systems. The victory had proven that their approach was correct, but she knew the aliens would adapt to human tactics. The next battle would be even harder. The aliens laughed at our ships, she said to her assistant. They thought our weapons were primitive toys. But sometimes, the old ways are the best ways. Chief Engineer Lisa Park worked tirelessly to repair the damaged human fleet. Her teams welding new armor plating and installing improved railgun systems. The ships that had fought the Zephyrians were already being upgraded for the battles too. Come, let them underestimate us again, she said, watching sparks fly from her welding torch. We'll show them what human engineering can really do. The war was far from over, but humanity had fired the first shot and proved they could fight. The galaxy would never be the same, and the crude metal ships that had once been objects of alien amusement were now symbols of human determination and strength. The species that had laughed at human technology was no longer laughing, and the universe had learned to respect the power of simple, effective weapons in determined hands.